Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Van, your friendly neighborhood English teacher. And I am super excited for today because I loved this section of the book. And I hope that you do too. I have to make sure I pull up what I can see. All right, so I can't wait. I have a question for you. The first question I have is this one. Did you like this section, like the second section of the book, better or like more or less or the same as the first section? So we're 2/3 of the way through. Are you feeling even more that you like it, or did you like the first section better and this one was slow for you? I'm kind of interested in what you think about the different sections. And then it's time to give us our number 1 through 5. How much did you like it? Remember, a 1 is I can't believe my teacher is making me do this class. And a 5 is, I can't believe we only have one more week of this book, right? So 1 through 5, let me see. Oh, and a birthday coming up. Happy birthday in advance. Okay, so some people like it more, some the same, some a lot more interesting, very intense. Yeah, totally agree. Cookie. And here are some numbers. 4.12. Cloudfall can always be counted on for the interesting decimals. And he was more knowledgeable. That's an interesting insight, Michael. Okay, well, we'll see how those come in. We've got a lot to do. So, first of all, someone who's been watching the class had sent me an email, or no, I saw it in the chat, that they actually live near Jean Craighead George's home, like her childhood home, the Craighead home. And she drove over there and took some pictures. And I thought I would show them to you. So they're in Pennsylvania, in Bowling Springs, Pennsylvania. And here's the outside of the house. And you can see a sign here because people can go visit it, right? And if you see this sign over here to the right, here's a close-up of that. It's a whole like marker that says that the Craighead family lived there. And it's a little, the type is a little bit small to see, but let me tell you what it says. It says, the 1885 house and surroundings were an inspiration to this family. Brothers Frank and Eugene became prominent entomologists. So those are people who study bugs. Frank's nationally known conservationist sons, John and Frank Jr., saved Yellowstone's grizzlies, popularized falconry, inspired the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, and contributed to National Geographic. Newbery-winning daughter Jean Craighead George wrote nature books Julie of the Wolves and My Side of the Mountain. And I just think it's amazing. So Cookie, it's in Bowling Springs, Pennsylvania. You can see it at the bottom there. So it's so amazing. And I just was thinking about this, that all the children in this family became these huge environmentalists inspired by being raised by these environmentalist scientist dad and uncle, right? And it just made me think about how influential the home is. And I'm kind of curious, how influential do you think the home is? Like, if you have a home full of music, are you more likely to become a musician? What kind of, and that led me to think about you guys, that when you grow up, like, what kind of home do you want to make? Like, what will you grow in your home? Like, this home grew these environmentalists and scientists and people who were super interested in conservation and ended up making a real difference. I'm just interested in what you think about you would want in your kind of home, like what kind of home that you want to make for yourself. So then I will be looking forward to reading those in the comments. So I just have to say thank you, Vanstars. So many great comments last week. So many. I have so many. So let's get going. This was hysterical, and there was a similar thread this morning, or this afternoon now, last week. It was like my school schedule in language arts class, like, what, right? And so we don't know what they're thinking, like, how could anyone schedule anything on top of our class, because it's sacred. I'm like, how is that? And then Erin says, you are on my TV. I am in your class on my TV. And that she's talking about that because I had it put a screinshot of her when she was in the Facebook Live I did. And so then she's like watching herself, watching me, watching herself all at the same time. And I think that's pretty meta. So I had to make note of that. And then Jason, I loved this thought. This was when I asked you guys, did you think it was right of Sam to take Frightful, the falcon, out of the nest? And Jason said he could possibly have saved her from poachers, but he also took her from her mother. So, and I think that that's the way we need to look at ethical issues. Is it's kind of easy to say, yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong. But what's harder and what's more meaningful is to be able to hold two opposing views simultaneously in your mind. Like, well, I can see both sides. And when you can do that, that's really lovely. And Chris Potter said, I think people have been doing it for ages. And because he's doing it for survival instead of support, it gets close to moral than some ways we treat animals. And so that was an interesting insight, because it like pulled in not only how this related to what Sam was doing in general, but how does this relate to how we treat animals today? Like when people have birds in cages or fish, or sometimes they capture even wild animals and keep them kind of interesting. And then Laura said it's cheating because he took a baby falcon, which is helpless. And I thought that was an interesting idea, because it was like Frightful didn't have a choice. And so that made it somehow more disturbing. And then Andrew says, Sam didn't steal Frightful because Frightful is a living thing and thus never belonged to anyone in the first place. If Frightful chooses Sam, letting him stay makes ethical sense. So that's kind of interesting. And that is an interesting idea, because we see that in the section that we read today, that he hadn't attached her with justice for quite a while. And so she could have flown away. So interesting point. And then, I just had to comment on this because Cookie said, I highlighted that in my ebook. My mom didn't buy me the real book. Ugh. And then Cookie, I am so with you. How many of you like the real book better than an ebook? I love the real book. I like a real book. Now, I will say, sometimes I like to read on a device because I have a Kindle, and it has light behind it. So when I'm reading in the middle of the night, like if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't fall back asleep, then I don't have to turn on a light and wake up my husband. And I do like that, but I feel so disembodied from the book. Like sometimes I'm reading a book on my Kindle and I don't even remember the name of the book. I feel so disanchored from it. I don't know if any of you feel that way. And so I like that. Oh, and then this was Jason talking about when I said, I think this is my second Jason one here, that when I talked about how, like, if you have a bigger house, then there's more to take care of. And this was the scene in the book when Sam was saying that it didn't take much fire to keep his treehouse warm, right? And we were talking about that lentil idea, right? Like, if you make yourself content with less, it takes less to maintain it. So that's kind of cool. And then somebody sent me, to tell the truth, I can't remember now if it was, wait, I got it. There we go. This comment. Sorry, I skipped a slide. Sorry. Mary Higgs said, my son and I are reading the Foxfire series together, and this book goes perfectly with the lessons we're living about living frugally. And I was like, whoa, what? Foxfire series? So I went and looked it up. This is one of the books from the Foxfire series. It's a series of like 17 books, and they're real life, like the story of Appalachia's philosophy of simple living. And you can get them. And I was reading the reviews, and I have no idea how I haven't found these in my life. I had to resist spending $240 and buying the whole set. So I got to see if my library has them first, but so amazing. I cannot wait to dive in. So thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm looking at some of these paper books. Yeah, ebooks are cheaper and easier to travel with. That's true. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no place for it. I just love the experience of a real book. All right. And then these were some of the ideas of, Bob C. talking about Thoreau. You just wait, my friend. Okay, so these were some of the things you guys thought that Sam should have taken with him that he did not take. Remember, he only took 6 things, and you guys had lots of suggestions. So there we go. That I thought your suggestions were great, especially Juliet's of lots of books. Okay, and this was an example of our future perfect tense. Elizabeth Hires will have bought action figures because she was talking about my Shakespeare action figure. And I will show you another one. Jane Austen, also my action figure. And then I also have, it's not really an action figure, but similar. Sorry, I had to move away to grab it off my bookcase. A little tiny Don Quixote. So one of my students gave me this, and it's made out of screws and like washers and a nail, and I just love it. So yes, I'm a big believer in all things literary. And then I love this. Cookie finds the silver lining to the Rona. Without Corona, we would have never met. This would never have happened. We would never have seen Mrs. Vanstar. So thank you, Cookie, for pointing out our silver lining. And then Simon Hay, I want to thank you for, Simon Hay Sutton, sorry, for putting all of our hashtags of our inside jokes together in one place. Be Like Sam, Justice for Margot, and Leech of Despair. All right, ready to dive in. Here we go. So here's what happens this time. So again, these are key events that I think of, and I want you to tell me if you have any other ideas. I will watch in the chat to see if you have anything that you think that I have left out. So I think the key events in this section are that he trains Frightful, and that he gets deer and he makes his door, that he makes a chimney, that he meets the man that he calls Bando, and then the Halloween shenanigans. So I think that's important. So I'm curious if you guys have anything that you would want to add to that. Now, one thing I will throw in right here is this. Stay tuned for an announcement at the end of class. Because there is something coming, and so be ready. Okay, remember, we're looking at this book through 2 particular lenses. The first one is, can you really ever run away? Can you ever really run away? And the second one is, what does it mean to be self-reliant? So again, we're going to be looking at that, and we're going to be keeping track of Sam's skills, which I've had to take to 2 slides because there are so many. So first chapter du jour, what I did about the first man who was after me. Dun, 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 right? Okay, and he said, this is the Fireboard, right? I realized I didn't have to go back to meet the man at all. I was perfectly free and capable of settling down anywhere. My tree was just a pleasant habit. And I put this on top of a slide of lentils because I think it's this same idea coming up again, right? Like that if you are less tied to something, then you're more flexible. You're more, you can just pivot so much easier. So interesting. And I just thought that was an interesting idea. And then this idea of Frightful, and he says she was designed in her bones for a swifter life. And I just thought that that was such an interesting idea. And are people like that? Are there things that we are... Oh, Bob C adds he met the Baron. Ooh, yes. Agree. Should have added that. Okay, so she was designed in her bones for a swifter life. And I think that there are people like that, right? Like designed for swifter thought, or designed like music is in their bones. Like they have to have it in their lives, or books, right? Like they need books. They need to be surrounded by language. People who are athletes or dancers or archers or whatever, like there's something that people who really thrive in nature, like they need to be out in nature. Like some people are perfectly content to just curl up in front of a fireplace and read books with a blankie. And then others really need to go adventuring, and some people like needing to be alone. So, I'm just curious if you think that's true of people. And I'm noticing in the chat some questions about what's wrong with lentils. There's nothing wrong with lentils. Here's a situation. Last class, I mentioned the philosopher Diogenes, who answered this question from a peer. And the peer was like, Diogenes, why are you just living on lentils, which are considered like a poor person's food, even though they taste just fine, but they're not as expensive as meat. And so he was like, if you would learn to serve the king like I do, then you wouldn't have to eat lentils. And Diogenes says, well, if you would learn to eat lentils, you wouldn't have to serve the king. And the idea being that if you keep your wants few, then you are more free. Okay. And then he says, he resolved hereafter to keep my yard clean. And that's after the fire warden comes. And so I'm going to add experience to the ways that Sam learns, because he learns from this experience that he has to, he's going to make a change in how he's doing. He learns something that he needs to keep his area clear so that people can't tell he was there. And so I'm going to add experience. So now we have all these ways that Sam learns his skills. So he talks about the jack in the pulpit root, and he says, or corn, tastes and looks like potato. It should never be eaten raw. And this is something I just want to give her a little bit of, I just want to give her a little bit of pushback on this. I don't like this that she does. I don't know if you've noticed it in the, a new hashtag, lentils are good. Thank you for a new one. Lentils are good. I don't know if you guys notice this, but sometimes I feel like she gets too lectury. And it's like, it should never be eaten raw. Like, it's like it turns from being a story to being a wilderness manual. And I don't know if any of you picked up that way. So I picked up on that, but I don't really like it when she does that. She does it a few times and I don't really like it. And I want to share with you a whale of a word that describes what I'm talking about that I don't like. The word is didactic. And what didactic means is, so if any of you are keeping your own personal word dictionary, didactic means intended to teach in like a lectury way. It can be patronizing, right? Like, and I feel like George sometimes comes across this way in the story, which is didactic, where rather than being an enjoyable experience, it's supposed to be some kind of lecture on the wilderness. I'm not sure if you picked up on that or felt the same way. Maybe you noticed it, but you didn't care. Lentils are wisdom. Yes. Nice, Lene. Oh, nice to see you. Okay, next chapter. I learned to season my food. And we meet the Baron, and you are absolutely right. We had the Baron. I should have included that. So let's get into the names a little bit. I think this is a good opportunity to get into the names. Sam meets the weasel and he says this about him. No other animal I knew, and I knew quite a few by now, had been so brave in my presence. And he names him the Baron. Well, the word baron has actually two different meanings. One meaning is it is the lowest rank of British nobility. So it would be someone, if you're a baron, you're going to be called Lord somebody, right? So it's a rank of British nobility, but it also is someone who is an important or powerful person in a specific industry. So you could have like a railroad, almost like tycoon, right? You could have like a railroad baron or a cattle baron. You'll hear that term most frequently, a cattle baron. These are people who would like own the big ranches and control a big section of one kind of industry. And I'm kind of curious if you are, if you think that Sam named the Baron because of the idea of English nobility or the idea of this captain of industry. So just curious what you guys think, or something totally, totally different. And then I just had to throw in a weasel joke for you because, you know, weasels. So a weasel walks into a fast food restaurant. What can I get you? Asks the cashier. Pop, goes the weasel. Get it? Pop. Do you get it? I got a million of them. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so Sam's skills so far. he can build snares. Oh, I have that twice. He makes salt. That's the one I actually wanted. Sorry, I need to adjust this. I made a mistake. I copy and paste the words, and so I copy and paste, but it didn't change. But we're up to all of this, and the one that I wanted to feature here was the making of the salt, actually. And when Sam makes salt, it reminded me of the movie version of this, because in the movie version of My Side of the Mountain, which don't watch it yet. Like, you watch it when we're done, but don't watch it now, because the ending is totally different, and I want to talk about that next week. So in the movie version, the premise of why Sam goes to the mountains is very, very different. In the movie, the family was supposed to have gone on a vacation where Sam was going to be able to conduct all these science experiments, but then their family vacation gets canceled. And so the whole reason that Sam goes into the mountains is to be able to conduct these experiments. And so, Simon Hayes says, yeah, the whole story was different. Yeah, it's not great. And I'm glad that you like the weasel joke. Thank you, guys. So it just made me think of it, that his family vacation gets canceled and he goes off to conduct these science experiments. And I feel like in the book, the way he makes salt was like a lab experiment, because he has a hypothesis of how to make it and he tries it out, he tests it, he comes to a conclusion, he actually has a lab report, and then he refines his method based on it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, so Sam the scientist or Sam the runaway? Which premise do you prefer? Either he runs away to try to see if he can find his great-grandfather's farm and see if he can make a go of it on his own and kind of change the trajectory of the Gribbly family, or do you like the premise of Sam the scientist, who, because the family can't go on vacation, decides to go up into the woods so he can make his own experiments? So curious which one you think is better. All right, next skill. After he makes salt, he also builds that bed and he makes a deer trap. So the skill, man, the hits just keep coming with Sam's skills. All right, runaway. Okay, Sam the scientist runaway. Okay, there you go, right? Oh yes, books are better than movies, 100%. There's one book that the movie is better, that I know of. And it is a novel by Somerset Maugham called The Painted Veil. And the movie version does a way better job with the ending than the book. But that's the only one I know of. So here are his skills. And then this is the training of Frightful. And he shows us the incrementalism with which he trains Frightful. And now he says Frightful will hop. And I think even though it's much faster than what it would occur in real life, as far as training a falcon, I love that he does show the process. He doesn't act like he brings this bird home and it will do and say everything right away. And I think that this contrasts well with the way that a lot of stuff goes. I think one of the criticisms you could make of this book is that everything comes too easily to him. Almost everything he tries works out. And I don't know that that's real. And I think it's almost unbelievable. And I think one of you pointed out, I think it might have been Michael, that in the book Hatchet, it was much harder. And I think that's more realistic. He's almost always able to do these things. And I liked that with training Frightful, he showed that it really was a thing, a slow thing. All right, next chapter, how a door came to me. So I waited one enormous minute later. And isn't that interesting how minutes can be small or enormous? I'll tell you the honest truth. I have not yet had, not like I've been lying to you since that. Yeah, I've been lying all this time and now I'm going to tell you the truth. No, not like that. What I mean is I'm going to tell you something interesting to me. In this whole time, so all through the short story classes and through this class, I have never one time looked down at the clock and had it be earlier than halfway through. Like the time just feels like it flies by to me. And I think some minutes are enormous and some minutes are just like the blink of an eye. So I loved that figurative language. One enormous minute later, a dark form ran onto the meadow. It stumbled and fell. And the thing I liked about this scene is that it's this interesting pattern that George sets up in this book, that when you plan, when you prepare, when you try, then opportunity comes out to meet you, right? Like, he was trying to figure out how to make this happen, and then it happened. And I think that is super similar to how it is in real life, that lots of times things don't happen necessarily because you fully made them happen. It's that you prepared to make them happen and you worked toward it, and then whatever you want to believe, luck, fate, destiny, God, whatever, meets you part way and gives you more than what you put in. And I think it was so interesting. And then this scene, right? This is with the poacher, and Sam is worried that the poacher is going to see him. And he says, I could see his boots. He stopped by the ashes of the fire and then went on. I could see my heart lift my sweater. I was terrified. And right here where Sam is worried that the poacher is going to detect him, and I think this fear of detection is another thing that we can add to, can you ever really run away? Because Sam is really worried about being found out. He's really worried about it. And I think that's another weakness of the novel, that there are people who know that this 14-year-old is living alone in the woods, like the librarian knows, Bill knows, and they're just like, oh, okay. And I just don't see that happening, but okay. And so then he says this, I just love this line. It was the last line of the chapter. This seemed like one of the nicest things I'd learned in the woods. And it was when the earthworms were popping out of the ground and making a sound. So I went on the internet and I listened to it, and you really can hear them. Like, they don't even have to come out of the dirt. You can hear them making, it sounds like Rice Krispies. They make this crackle pop sound, and it's incredible. And the thing that I loved about this line was this idea that it says so much about how you don't have to be powerful and you don't have to be famous to make your mark. And I was thinking, the next time that you make some noise in the world, just remember these little earthworms, and that, like, even the smallest thing can make a noise that even things much bigger will hear. And I think that we have those earthworm moments. Okay, Sam skills. He makes a deer trap, and he smokes the fish. He learns how to smoke fish. All right, next, in which Frightful learns her ABCs. So, actually sat on the baron's shoulder. So the lesson here, so this is what happens when that couple comes into the meadow, and Sam's like, go away, go away, go away. And the Baron Weasel, who to this point has not really been his friend, they sit on his boulder, the Weasel's boulder, as if he owns it, right? But they sit on the Baron's boulder, a scream, a scuttering and scraping of boots on the rocks. And I think that's an interesting way that the author shows us and doesn't tell us, right? She doesn't say, and then the woman started screaming, and they scraped their boots as they climbed off the rock. She just says, a scream, a scuttering and scraping of boots, and allows us to make the movie in our head. And I think that one of the things that's interesting here is that sometimes you're, maybe in this case, not clearly enemy, but someone who you don't realize is on your side actually does you a favor. So now we have more skills in this chapter. He learns how to tan the hide of the deer. He cuts down a tree. And I actually wrote in my book, when he cuts down the tree, I wrote, just like that. Because cutting down a big tree like that is not something that you can do that easily. I mean, let's ask the Magic 8 Ball, shall we? Like, Magic 8 Ball, is it really that easy to cut down one of these big trees? Very doubtful. No lie, that's what it says. Very doubtful. I think they're right. So, and he makes the jesses for Frightful, and he makes a spearhead to be able to spear fish, and he sews. So the skills just keep coming. It says, oh yeah, they are. I see what Cookie's saying. Like the Sam's skill sides are low. They're not on my side. I know what causes that. Hold on. I know what causes that. It's Mrs. Van neglecting to set, there's a setting in, there we go. That should make it better. So we'll be able to see if it does. Thanks for pointing that out. I had not noticed because anyway, I hadn't noticed. So thank you. All right. So how Sam learns his skills, he also learned something from the mushroom expert at the botanical gardens about wild mushrooms. And that was another thing is like, the lecture on not eating wild mushrooms. I feel like she was afraid that some kid was going to read this book and then go die of eating poison mushrooms. Okay. And Sam then doesn't let Frightful just eat what she catches. He takes it away and he says, that sounds mean, but if she gets in, ooh, do you see my typo? If she gets in the habit of eating what she catches, she will go wild. And I thought, I was curious, I wanted to ask you guys, what's something that seems mean, but is actually necessary? Actually necessary. So what's something that you can think of that seems mean, but is actually necessary? And one of the things I thought of was, I know this is kind of gross, but when babies are little, there are these bulb syringes. I don't know if any of you have seen them, but they have a big bulb at the bottom. They're like rubber and they're long tube. And when a baby is congested, you use them to suck all the snot out of their nose. And the babies hate it, absolutely hate it, but you've got to get that out or they can't breathe. And because babies are very much nose breathers. So ask the Magic 8 Ball hashtag. We're getting a lot of hashtags today. So, okay, I'm looking at this. Doing homework, it seems mean, but it's necessary. Okay, putting down a pet. Yeah. Actually, when our dog Lainey was dying of cancer, I asked the vet, like, when will I know it's time? And he said, when you're keeping her alive for her, not you. Yeah. Parents telling us. Yeah. Killing plants. Yeah. Punishment for a child, discipline. Yeah. Vaccinations. Oh, that's a good one. Cleaning a cut, surgery. I know that is disgusting. Just wait. You'll have kids. Allergy shots. Yeah, you guys have come up with a lot of examples of that. Good job. Good job. All right, next chapter, in which I find a real live man. Oh, I had to say that this is, I think, my favorite chapter so far. I love this chapter, and I think you'll see why. First of all, there's this beautiful figurative language, this beautiful, beautiful figurative language, this idea of the gasping joy. If it's the gasping joy of summer, what part of the summer is it? Right? She doesn't have to say, oh, it was the end of the summer. She tells us the gasping joy, like with its last breath. I just love figurative language. All right. And then with a little ear scratching and back rubbing, Jessie C. James became a devoted friend. And so let's talk names again, because we had the Baron Weasel, and now we have a raccoon. Now, Jessie James, in real life, Jessie James was a bandit, and raccoons are often called bandits because they have that mask, right? And it's what raccoons look like. And so I was curious. So he calls this guy in this chapter Bando because he thinks he's a bandit, because he thinks he's on the run from the police, which was a hysterical thing, kind of almost slapstick humor. We've got the Baron Weasel, and we've got Frightful, and we've got Jessie C. James. So he names a lot of things. And I'm curious to see where your name came from. Do any of you have any idea about why your parents picked the name that they did? And Siri points out that the names of the animals don't really fit together. And you're right. It's not like he named them all after planets or all after places or all after something. They all are very, very different. Agreed. So I'm curious if you know, they can pull that mask down to their mouth and boom, ready for quarantine. That's hysterical, Cookie. Love how the raccoon a full name, but not Bando. Oh, that's an interesting insight, Noel. Noel, I love that name. That's one of my favorite names. Oh, your grandma named you. Oh, that's interesting. Named after your grandfather. It is common and pretty. Popular name, they just liked it. Your grandparents, named after your grandfather, named after a saint. Parents just made it up. Your name means Ireland. Yes, it does. Name means warrior. Oh, that's interesting to know if your name means something. If your name means something. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Your name is from Pride and Prejudice. Oh, I love that novel. Yeah. They love the name. Nice. Oh, that is really interesting. William Bradford, the Pilgrim Governor. Yes, absolutely. So I am also a Mayflower descendant, so that's kind of cool. That's nice. Your middle name after your great-grandmother. Your middle name after your great-grandmother. Multiple of you have that. Your first name is your grandpa's and your middle name is your dad's. I love that. Your parents thought you would be a warrior because of your older brothers. Like you would have to fight. I love seeing what your names mean. That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, next. And I'm hoping that this slide shows up well. Hopefully I fixed that. His next one is he makes soap. By the bark of the slippery elm. I thought that was really interesting. But notice now, Sam's skills, slide 2. He also makes mussels, like prepares them to cook and makes sassafras tea. So his skills are just incredible. And I have to have them over on the second page because my picture hides them at the bottom right corner. And then here, this is another one that goes back to, can you ever really run away? Because they hear the sirens and Frightful is worried and he's like, no, if they're after me, there won't be a siren. And again, it's that idea that, can you really run away if you feel like you're being chased? Okay, and he says, it's hard to realize that the rustle of falcon's wings is not much of a noise to a man from the city, because by now, one beat of her wings and I would have awakened from a sound sleep as if a shot had gone off. And I thought there's an interesting way in which Sam has changed through the story. And I'm curious if you can think of any other ways Sam has changed. And if you can think of any other way, is his hearing, what he's talking about now. And I don't know if it's really hearing. It may be more alertness, that his alertness has changed. Do you think that's the most important change? Or has Sam changed in some other really important way? And I think this, yeah, okay. I was going to do something, but I'm going to wait just a second. Okay, and then here's another question. Sam assumes the man is running away from the police, and I want to know, do you think this assumption is fair, right? It's easy to judge Sam, because later we find out that the guy wasn't running away from the police. He was a college professor, which is like not the same thing. But is it fair for him? Like, you hear sirens, and then you see this guy, and he definitely is in some kind of extremist, some kind of distress, and he clearly doesn't belong where he is, and he's got nothing with him, so it's not like he's planned on camping. Do you feel like it's a reasonable assumption to make? I'm curious if you think so. And then we have a whale of a word. Okay, allusion. So an allusion is a reference to something, usually in literature or history. So I could say something like, it has been raining for so long, I'm going to build an ark, right? Which would be an allusion or a reference to Noah's Ark. So allusion is a fairly common literary device. You're going to see it in lots of literature, and the higher level of literature you read, the more allusion you'll see. And what happens is all literature starts to enmesh with itself, because like this book is making a reference to this one, and this one is making a reference to this one, and this one's making a reference to this one back here. And it becomes like, if any of you have ever heard of like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, where all the actors in Hollywood are connected, all the books are connected. And that would be such a fun thing to do, is to look at all the elusive references and see how they connect with each other. But and there are some allusions in this book that are interesting. So the first one is Desdemona, and this is what Bando says to Sam, because Sam is so trusting of him. Sam's like, oh, do you want something to eat? And it's a reference to Desdemona. This is another way to say Desdemona in Shakespeare's play Othello. And Desdemona, her character is known for being very trusting of people and very naive, like taking people at face value and trusting them. So the man is calling Sam a trusting person by calling him Desdemona. Then he calls him Thoreau. And this is an allusion to Thoreau, which somebody mentioned earlier in the chat. And I was like, oh, we're going to get to Thoreau. Okay, so Thoreau was an author. Henry David Thoreau was an author. And for 2 years and 2 months, he went and he lived in a cabin by Walden Pond near Concord, Massachusetts. Now, it says a life in the woods, right? Life in the woods. The cabin was just like a 3-mile walk away from the town. So it isn't like he was out in the middle of nowhere, but it was still isolated. And he built a small cabin there on land that was owned by his friend, another author named Ralph Waldo Emerson. So the land that Thoreau was living on was actually owned by Emerson. Emerson helped Thoreau a lot in his life, actually. And he was almost totally self-sufficient there on that land, growing his own vegetables, doing odd jobs. And it was his intention there to live simply and to be able to contemplate and to be able to walk in nature. And a lot of what he wrote there has become very, very well known. And the book he wrote was called Walden, and it's a series of essays. And this is probably the most famous line from it. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Now we're going to see if this works. You're not going to be able to hear the sound, but I want to show you. This is a scene. You're going to be able to hear the sound because I have the computer pulling the sound from my mic and not the computer. I should have thought that. I have time. But this is a scene from Dead Poets Society, and they start their meeting by reading these words of Thoreau's. They start with these words. That's how they start the Dead Poets Society meeting. And so if you haven't seen that, that movie, that's it. So, and then Bando, who is a college professor, says, I have led a varied life. Dishwasher, sax player, teacher. To me, it has been an interesting life. Just now it seems very dull. And I was kind of curious what you think. What makes Sam's way of life not dull? Like, he's got no phone, no lights, no motor car, not a single luxury, right? He's got no Xbox. He's got no friend. Like, we're quarantined with our families and we can go to the grocery store. Like, Sam is out there alone. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't have anything, not even board games, right? Like, he has nothing. What makes his life not dull? Oh, we're going to see, oh, Captain. Yes, oh, Captain, my Captain. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, you guys, you're so good. You're so good. Okay, he has so much to do. Yeah, he has so much to do. Okay, there's another illusion. When Bando says, when they make the clay jars for jam, and Bando says, well, it's not Wedgwood. Wedgwood is a particular kind of china, and it was made by a man named Josiah Wedgwood, and in England. And it's actually, I think, still made, but it was in its heyday in the late 1700s. And it comes in lots of colors, and lots of different styles. But the most famous probably is this kind. It's called jasperware. And this jasperware, it didn't feel smooth like china. It felt rough like stoneware. And it's very well known. Like, if you say Wedgwood blue, people know you mean this blue, this kind of periwinkle blue. And those white characters and figures and trees that you see were raised up in what's called relief. So they stood up above the plate. And even jasperware came in other colors, but this is what it was most famous for. So that was another illusion. Okay, so we're done with illusions. And now moving on. Bando said he liked the Baron best when he was in his hole. And I thought about this. I thought, oh, there are some things in my life I like that. Like, I love it when my granddaughter is visiting, and I also love it when she takes her nap, right? So we have things we love, and we love them even more. Like, we have friends sometimes who we like a lot better when we're not with them. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but I think that's what he's saying, right? Deb Courtney, you have some modern Wedgwood cups with scenes from Beatrix Potter's writings on them. Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Bob C says, wouldn't that get dirty? They didn't really eat off of it. It was really just decorative. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. I can't play a song, but I put this here to show that there is a song. So they sing. It's kind of interesting though, because it says, these are the words to the song that they said they listened to. The young voyageur. Well, a voyageur, these are, it's a Canadian term. So the voyageurs, it's a French Canadian term, a Quebecois term, where these were the people the men who would row in canoes the fur pelts back to, they were employed by the fur companies to transfer goods and passengers along trading posts. So this song is French Canadian in origin. And so from the wilds of the north is referring to Canada. And if you go listen to the song, like you can go find a file of the song. And when you do, it's like, you know what? Let me see. Let's see here. I'll see if I can make it play. This is it. This is the tune. Okay, here's why I play the tune for you. Because he says, when we played The Young Voyager, tears came to our eyes. It was so sad. And I just was curious whether you feel like that music is really sad music. It just doesn't feel that sad to me. It feels kind of peppy to me a little bit. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Kind of sad? I don't know. Yeah, it is kind of like Sam. Good call. So maybe it isn't that the music itself was sad. Maybe it's like what it makes them think about. Gladsome and free. I don't know. Interesting. Thoughts about the song. And I think when you hear something like that in a book, when they mention a song, go find it. Go find it. Go listen to it. If you're not familiar with it, for sure listen to it. But even if you are, go look for it. Go look for it and find it. It will mean more to you. Yes. Okay. Even if you know the song, go play it. This is what the author wants you to be hearing and thinking about in your mind. And he said, so Bando leaves, and he says, I was so lonely that I kept sewing on my moccasins to keep myself busy. And I think it's interesting. He wasn't lonely before Bando came. So why is he lonely now? Oh, Anna saying folk-like. Yes, in fact, Anna, it is included in a volume of folk songs. So you are absolutely right. Excuse me, about the genre. All right, and then he realizes that he's kind of neglected his animals, and now that Bando's gone, it's like Frightful's like become more attached to him, and he's more engaged with Jesse C. James and with the Baron. And he says, I had the feeling we're all back together again. And that made me think about how sometimes we get in some new relationship and then we forget our other friendships. And then when that new relationship kind of cools off, we go back to these old friendships. And I just think that's such a dynamic that's real, right? And I think you guys are right about that he had a friend to miss. All right, more skills. So first page is all filled up. Second page, adding on. He makes pottery in this chapter. He learns how to make willow whistles, and he sews moccasins. So, whoa, right? And then, in which the autumn provides food and loneliness. Ooh. Okay. This personification is so gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. Look at Summer Blaze. Now, I took out some lines so that I could put all the personification together. Right? You guys are giving me some awesome examples in the comments. You're giving me some really awesome thoughts. Okay, Sam's talents in building and designing various contraptions. Well, I've tried to indicate them, right? The snares, the trap for the deer, the spear. If there's something I left out, let me know. Okay, so Summer blazed a trail into the mountains. First she burned the grasses, then she sent the squirrels and chipmunks running boldly through the forest, then she frosted the aspen leaves, then she gathered the birds together in flocks. And you get this image of summer as a person, and a very powerful person, like commanding the elements, like, and then she does this. And I just have this image of summer as this embodiment of a very powerful woman who is making the elements at her command. And I just love it. And then Sam follows with his own. I smoked fish and rabbit, dug wild onions by the pouchful, and raced September for her crop. So the idea of they're both racing towards this thing is so beautiful, so beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate it. If you guys notice typos, be sure to do this. And Simon, yes, I remember what happens to the falcon. Shh. No talking about frightful that way. You guys, I don't have a falcon puppet. All I have is an owl. But my owl will just have to be frightful. And I know. And my owl puppet is super cool because, like, it can turn its head, yes. But I don't know if you could see it, but it actually can blink its eyes. So I'm pretending that this is frightful. And we're going to pretend that we don't know what happened to Frightful at the end of the movie. Don't want to upset them. I must say here that I was beginning to wonder if I should not go home for the winter and come back again for the spring. And you all know what I'm thinking when I read this, right? Can you ever really run away, right? Can you ever really run away? And then I love this. When he's thinking about his tree, and he's like, how am I going to keep it warm? And he realizes, oh, just like I dug the clay for the clay pots, I could also make a clay chimney for this. So I love that. I love that idea. And I think it goes back to that same idea that if you move forward, if you work, if you prepare, then the ideas will come to you. And because the only reason that he remembered that is it's because it's where they got the clay for the jam pots. That's what made him think of it. If they had not done that, he wouldn't have had this thought. So I just think it's great. And then again, suddenly I was terribly lonely. This is when he thinks about Halloween, because he has this scarecrow. He's like filled the legs of his pants with clay, and it's like a scarecrow. Suddenly I was terribly lonely. And I think it's interesting how emotions can just turn on like that. And I think it's true for us, right? We can go from being very happy to really sad almost instantly, and vice versa. And he says this about Frightful. I was now so fond of her, she was more than a bird. And I wondered if any of you who had felt that Sam wasn't right to have taken Frightful, that it wasn't fair, it wasn't right or ethical, then do you think that his growing feelings for her and their affection, mutual affection for each other, and the relationship that they have, does that make her taking him more defensible? I guess in the end, like, do the end justify the means? And Noel, my tree does not have a name. It's just the Enchanted Tree puppet. I actually used to use it when I was teaching little bitty kiddos. When I taught little bitty kiddos, not that young, but this was the storytelling tree. So whenever we would read a story, I would bring out the storytelling puppet. Okay, skills, first page, second page. He makes willow whistles, sews moccasins, that's where he left, and then makes clay chimney. New skill, makes clay chimney. All right, in which we all learn about Halloween, last chapter of the day. I loved this image. And I don't know if any of you saw it, like maybe a week and a half ago, where there was a big, huge, like supermoon, and it was amazing. But when he says, the moon is coming up behind the aspens, it is as big as a pumpkin and as orange. The winds are cool. The stars are like electric light bulbs. And it's this figurative language again. And I think it's such a human instinct to use this type of language because we speak to be understood. And so we use this figurative language to make sure that the person understands what we're saying. Like the moon was orange. It was orange, as big and orange like a pumpkin, right? And everybody knows pumpkin. So we say that. And we crave being understood. And that's what figurative language does for us. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, Kira saw the super moon. We call him Tree Puppet, so that's his name. Okay, Tree Puppet. That works fine. Yeah, Sam kind of acted like her mom and Frightful probably had the same feelings for him that she would have had for her mom. Oh, yeah. You know what? I think you're probably right. All right. Here is the t-shirt that Sam needs to wear on Halloween. Let the wild rumpus begin. So any of you who know the book, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, know what I'm talking about, right? Or no, that's not it. This is, sorry, wrong book. I have that on my mind because I saw a meme about it. This is From Where the Wild Things Are. Let the wild rumpus begin. And that's what happens in Sam's treehouse. And the animals just wreak havoc on it. And he says, I thought of all the ash cans I had knocked over on the streets of New York on Halloween, right, being mischief. And he says, it seemed utterly humorless. And it made me realize that it's easier to feel true remorse if you have felt what the person feels who you did the thing to. And it made me wonder, is it possible to feel true remorse if you haven't felt yourself how it feels to have that thing done to you? Like, it's easy for us to feel badly if we hurt someone's feelings, if we've had our feelings hurt in the same way and we know what it feels like. But if you haven't, I just wonder. So curious what you think about that. All right. And then he says, never had there been a more real Halloween night, like all the tricks and treats, right? And then he says something interesting. He says, there are no more notes about Halloween. And we get this insight into, okay, I'm seeing that some of you like Where the Wild Things Are. Let me tell you something about it you may not know. Where the Wild Things Are is a retelling of Homer's The Odyssey. So if you've read The Odyssey in school or just for fun, then go back and reread Where the Wild Things Are, and you will see that that's what it is. So he says there's no more notes about Halloween. And I think this is so interesting because this line, like this is it. This is where the whole narrative arc is most formally revealed. It's been alluded to all along. He's mentioned it a few times. But what we get here is this unusual narrative structure being laid out there for us. And the narrative structure of this whole novel is that this kid has experienced this. And while he was experiencing it, he was writing about it. And now this is him later reading over his journal and like sharing it with us with commentary. So he's reading the journal he's kept. He's using it as a guide to tell the story, but he's adding and he's taking away, picking out what's most important. And he didn't even start in the beginning of the story. It's a very interesting narrative structure. Very, very, very unusual. In fact, I don't know that you will see another narrative structure like that. I can only think of one other book that I know that has it. In this exact same way. So can I do Watership Down? You know what? I would consider Watership Down because too many people read Watership Down about rabbits. I talked about it before. Okay, so we're left with this. Can you ever really run away? And you have to think about in this chapter, can you? He doesn't get caught in the sense of having to go back, but we have multiple times where he's thinking of home, wondering if he's going to have to go home, wondering if he can survive the winter. Kind of interesting. And then what does it mean to be self-reliant and looking at his skills? And remember, we're supposed to be thinking for ourselves, like what skills do we need? We don't need the same skills as Sam, but do we have the skills we need? All right, so for next week, read the rest of the book and look for those same themes. Look for self-reliance and can you ever really run away? And I want you to think about, do you think Sam wants to be found? And do some dreams have an inevitable ending? Okay, now, that's not the end though, because I want to look at some rock stars. So we had the book pairing assignment that many of you did. And so I just want to point out the ones that were in there by this morning. And the first one was this pairing with Call of Courage. And I thought this was such an interesting pairing. And it made me want to go reread Call It Courage. So I liked that one a lot. Julie of the Wolves, a natural pairing, right? Natural because both, I mean, the person does a good job of explaining why they think they go together. But I definitely think because one is her Newbery winner and one is her Newbery honor book, I think it's worth reading both of them and deciding, do you think one of them deserved more or less? And then Hatchet. And ooh, I loved this cover that this person picked, right? Loved it. And I think Hatchet, again, a very natural pairing. This was an interesting pairing and I liked it. Remember, you guys have the link from last week. You can go look at them. And I just really liked it. Elizabeth, I think you're right. Like a criminal who's always looking over his shoulder. Yeah, exactly. This was an interesting pairing, and again, made me want to go read the book again. And then this was interesting too, and I think a good contrast. We've talked about this before. And then I loved this one. Like, you guys came up with such great ones. Little House on Prairie is one of my favorite series of all. And actually, one of the book recommendations I would make to you guys right now is The Long Winter. I think there's a lot to learn about the quarantine by reading The Long Winter. And then this one, and this book pairing was the most unusual, I think, and I love unusual. So this was great, and I had never read this book, and it made me really interested. And what was particularly interesting in this one was the person's description and the way that they said, so many of you were like, okay, I know this doesn't seem on the outside like they would be a pair, but this is why they are. And that's almost always the strongest pairing. And then the last one was this one, Out of My Mind at My Side of the Mountain. And I thought it was an interesting pairing because not only was the rationale interesting, but I thought there was some similarity in the graphic design on the covers. So that was kind of interesting. And I liked that. So that was there. If you guys want to still go in and add a book pairing, I'm happy to look at them. Or if you want to go look at the ones that people did, you can go see them there. Okay. So can I interest you in a challenge? If you didn't do last week's, and you didn't do last week's and you would like to participate this time, then I have a new one. And in this one, what I want you to do is we are going to make a My Side of the Mountain playlist. So I've put the names of every chapter in a Google Sheet, and I want you to choose, I want you to choose a song and put your song here where it says music choice, and then why you think that would be a good song. And then if somebody else has another song they think would be a good one for that chapter, you can add it here as an alternate choice. And again, I would say that, like, I don't know, this one, I'll show them all. But like for the book pairings, if you didn't see yours, it's just because you didn't get it in early enough, because I prepare these and I have to stop at some point, right? But I hope that you guys will do this. I'm very interested in seeing your playlist and what songs you think would go there. So if you're interested in doing that, then this is the link. So it's bit.ly, My Side of the Mountain -music. I will put this link in the description box of this video, so it will be there. And then what I will do is I will take all those songs and I will create a playlist on this channel that will be the My Side of the Mountain playlist, that will be a public playlist that you will always have access to. Why did I ignore only by book pairing? I don't know what you mean, but I put in all the ones that I had seen up to this morning. Okay, and now the announcement. I didn't ignore anybody's on purpose. The book study for, so this was voted on, and here it is. We are going to read His Majesty's Dragon, which is fantasy tale. It is Napoleonic Wars with dragons. So we will be doing this over the course of 4 weeks. It will start not next week, because we still have one more week of this. It will start the week after on May 6th. The reason that I am saying it now is so that you have time to order the book, because they're kind of slow right now because of everything going on. So if you want to order the actual book, like as opposed to the ebook, if you want to order the actual book, then you have time. And so we are going to do His Majesty's Dragon. The first week, there will not even be a reading assignment. So even if you don't have the book yet, it will be okay. The first week, we're going to learn about the Napoleonic Wars. And friends, it will be very interesting. So if this wasn't one of the ones that you were hoping for, sorry, I read all the feedback that I had, and this is what I chose. So I think, though, that you should give it a shot, because I think you're going to be surprised at how much you like it. So we'll be reading it in sections. This one will have chapters that are actual chapters, and you can get the flyer so that you have all the dates and know all the details at this link. So we will start again with that on May 6th. So basically it's just going to keep going. Wednesday, every Wednesday, and we'll do through May. So this will take us through May, and then it will be vacation. But that's where we're going. I don't have Instagram for Gifted Guru, but I did start an Instagram for that. I'm just not an Instagram person, really. Sorry. It just feels like a lot of pressure to me to take a lot of pictures. But anyway, so yeah, so that's what we're doing next, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'm very interested in seeing your playlist. Very interested in seeing your playlist. So let me see that. And then for next week, again, read through to the end of the book. Read through to the end of the book, considering, do you think Sam wanted to be found? And do some dreams just naturally come to an end? So until then, until next Wednesday, friends, next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. This is Mrs. Van signing off.